evening. Good evening from both of our stars.
Yes.
It's rare when I'm rubbing shoulders with a fellow Israeli, and it's so good to be here talking with
Well,
you down the corner, up the
thank
corner.
you so much for having me. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I tend to get nervous, and because people need to know that even I get nervous, even though it's been 6 years, once a week, and it's never, the butterflies are always there. So I forget to say my name. I forget to tell people who I am and what I'm doing. So my name is Dr. Tovah Goldfine, and this is TMS Roundtable Recovery. Um, and we've been streaming live for close to 6 years because I'm relentless and this is my passion. And we've been just meeting with amazing people. I am so blessed. No, I'm going to introduce you in a minute. I'm so blessed to meet doctors and therapists and scientists and movie directors and authors and people that have healed and recovered, people that are in their journey and on their path of recovery, and their bravery and their courage to come and speak, and how healing it has been for them to speak with others, and how healing it's been for me. So, this is sometimes about me
Yes,
because I love it, and I feel very, very blessed to be a conduit to bring this knowledge to people. And Noa Kairy, let me just I like to tell people how I met my guest. I'm not on LinkedIn as much as I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram too much. I get a little intimidated by Instagram and LinkedIn. And I go on there and I see you. And I'm like, who's this Noah woman? And then I see that you're in Israel. And then I see that you're doing something with pain reprocessing therapy. And I'm like, okay. And I reached out to you and realized that you're living here in Israel as well. And you're also, I think you're American. You came here when you were young. Then
right.
we're talking more about what you're doing, and I'm blown away. Number one, I have not had anybody really talking about polyvagal theory, which is just a brilliant, and a lot of us know about it, but we're going to touch it a bit and bring it to people's living rooms tonight. And you also had your own healing journey, which, thank God, you're on the other end and you can talk about it. And your symptoms are relatable to so many people that are struggling. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and I'm going to just speak and hold the space. Um, I like to start like a timeline. So you're living your life, and all of a sudden you have symptoms that continue.
Okay.
What's
So,
next?
so I would say something like almost 9 years ago, I was living my life. I had two small children. One of them was only about a year old. My youngest was a year old. And I was honestly, I started to feel quite a lot of pain, especially in my knee and my right knee. And one of the, as a very young mom, I needed to be very active, and the knees were something that had to get me going. And I was honestly very, very much gutted, very, very disappointed by like the way that I was feeling, and I was pushing through. I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis at the age of 38 or 37 even. I was quite young, and doctors were absolutely astonished and extremely negative, saying that I wouldn't walk past a certain age. I would need knee surgery at the age of 50. I would need to have a second knee surgery at the age of 60. And I just, it plummeted. I plummeted into depression, into certain states of like, just anxiety. And of course, what happened was my body started to, bring me more symptoms, right? It snowballed into fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I started to develop different kind of multiple chronic conditions. And all of these conditions were extremely confusing to me. I didn't really understand what was going on with my body at the time. I tried so many different things. I was trying different kind of therapies. I had knee injections done. I contacted a nutritionist. I tried acupuncture. I tried all sorts of even Western and Eastern medicine, anything that could really help my body heal. But I wasn't really understanding that there was something deeper there. I started to become a lot more familiar with the emotional processing field, and I started to do a bit of somatic work inside. So it involved a lot of trauma work, somatic
Some
experiencing.
of the listeners, if
Yes.
someone knew uh, what somatic means.
So somatic is body oriented. It has to do with the body going inside and tuning into the body's sensations, to its feelings, to the emotions, to anything that the body is showing us with respect to what it is inside rather than what it is in our mind. So, or our brains. So, yes, the brain and the mind are connected to the body, but when we go in somatically, it's actually tuning in and listening to what our body has to say. So, our body is the containment of our emotions, of our feelings, of our experiences. And we hold the trauma within the body. We hold it within the fascia, the tissues. So when we tune in somatically within the body, we actually start to unblock or to inquire what is there, what kind of trauma might be living there, or what kind of emotions are living there that is blocking us from living our life to the fullest.
Noah,
Yes.
scary to go there. It's scary. Who wants to go there? Why do I need to go there?
So
Can I get there another way?
yeah, so this is what happened is that with me anyway, I decided I started off my journey somatically within the body in a very dramatic way. I was taught to actually dive a little bit too deep into my body without any kind of regulation and without any kind of balance. So I didn't recognize that my body was already very dysregulated. And with anyone actually going into the body when they're in a state of dysregulation, when they're in a state of complete anxiety or panic, or their thoughts and minds are taking over, what happens is that it feels very overwhelming, right? So there's like a whole bunch of, like a whole inner world in there that can seem quite scary. So I really learned the wrong way, and I was quite re-traumatized by the whole experience. So later on, I discovered a lot more ways of reframing the way that you can go inside somatically. And that was through the polyvagal theory. And the polyvagal theory was actually one of the only things that actually really that I did, working with the polyvagal theory together with the brain rewiring was really the one key to healing what was going on in my body. So the polyvagal theory, it relates to the way our nervous systems see the world. So when we look at the world through a lens of danger, we're in a survival state, and the nervous system will show us different signs of what that looks like. For instance, if we're feeling a little bit dysregulated, if we're not balanced because we've gone through difficult life experiences, if we've experienced some kind of trauma, or we have a physical injury, even, or some kind of emotional like event that happened. So trauma doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something even small. It can be a biological trauma, something like a parasite, a virus. It can be anything like even like a bad injection or some cortisol or something that has gone into the body that the body didn't agree with. Or it could be something developmental from when, someone is very young, or it can be something that, happened, like it can be something a little bit stronger, like abuse or neglect or something even stronger. So all that kind of trauma is just, it lodges in the body, and the polyvagal theory allows us to understand how our nervous systems react to these triggers and what can be done in order to bring safety into the body. So it's really all to do, it really has to do with how we bring safety. And it helps us to map out our nervous system. So, what state are we in? Are we in a sympathetic state, which is fight or flight, stress, chronic stress? Or are we in a shutdown state? where we feel disconnected from our bodies. We feel caved in, we feel numb, and we feel a little bit hopeless and very helpless about the world and ourselves. So when we know these facts and we know what's going on with our nervous systems, we can say, hey, this is exactly what I need to do to bring myself into balance. And that, of course, ties into chronic pain. It ties into all sorts of multiple chronic conditions. It ties into trauma. It helps all sorts of different kind of conditions.
So you're suffering, struggling with these symptoms in your 30s, which is unheard of, and it's unheard of in your 70s as well. I'm just saying, it doesn't. We don't have to be sick, especially at that age. And you start to understand there's an emotional, like, not everybody wants to buy into that. I mean, the majority of people don't even think that the mind and body are connected. So what about you and your life opened you up to that truth with science? We know it's science, but what in your life opened you up to that there's an emotional component, and your trauma, whatever it was contributing to your body attacking itself?
So that's really interesting. I get this question quite a lot. I always believed in more natural ways of handling anything. So that was already something I didn't automatically start believing in the body mind connection. That's something that I learned with some results. However, what I noticed was that when I started to feel good about myself, when I started to feel like I was living my life and I felt calm, I noticed that my symptoms started to decrease.
Wow.
And so when I started to feel that I was living my life or traveling, I started noticing that I wasn't feeling as awful. So I started to tie in a little bit about how is my mind reacting to this kind of feeling, and why is that my body starting to reflect that? So I started to link the body mind connection. And
Beautiful. So I just want to stop. First of all, I just want to say hello to Chris, um, who was on. Was it last week, Chris? We were together last week or 2 weeks ago. She healed from this long COVID and central sensitization, fibromyalgia, and all.
Mhm.
And her amazing story, I just want to put it out there, was just accepting her reality. You know, accepting her reality, like, hey, I got this. My body got me here. My body can heal me. Like, very
Right.
high for her. And she also, I just want to say, she also created like, she had a mission. I'm going to heal. I've got to go to school. I have a family. I'm going to get there. Like, nothing's going to stop me. And that's also chemical. But hello, Scotty. Scotty's also an amazing coach. Also had like a 15-year journey of back pain. He was just interviewed by Dr. David Clark, and also, oh, and Katie. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so happy you're here in the studio, this holy studio with Noah. Here's the question for someone like Katie, maybe Chris at some point, and I know people that I'm working with. I want you to hear this. Here's the thing: you started to feel better when you felt calmer. Your symptoms went down. Now I will talk to someone and they'll say, "Well, I felt calm and my symptoms don't go down, doc. What's wrong with me?" And I don't want to say, well, you didn't do it correctly. I kind of want to say your body didn't get your body's still getting the message that there's a threat. So what do we say to these people that are so brilliant, so smart, so sensitive, and like doing the work, but not seeing the change in the symptoms? So I also like shift your focus away from the symptoms, like, like outcome independence. Let's just have a good day. So what can we say to some of the people that are in that fork in the road and they can't move forward because they're doing all the tools but not seeing changes?
So I have quite a lot to say about this, but I'm going to shorten it. Whenever someone is on a mission to try and fix what it is that is wrong in their lives or in their bodies, okay, this sends a message to the brain and reinforces this survival danger feedback loop in our brain that we are not safe. So what happens is that when we go through any kind of difficult experience, like a traumatic experience. What happens is there's a little bit of a disconnect, right, from something within us that is actually, it's a very pure part of us that just wants a little bit of peace and to live its own life and to really find its own true self expression. And when we're in survival or protective mode and our brain is in that feedback loop, we're not experiencing that pure self, that true self expression. And when you're actually trying to fix your symptoms, you're telling this part, I don't accept you for the way that you are. Accepting your symptoms and your body state does not mean that you want it to continue forever. It just means that you are trying to send the message that no matter what I do, okay, I'll still be okay. I'll still find my spark in life. I'll still go out and enjoy my life. And the funny thing is, as soon as you remove that fix it drive, as soon as you stop trying to fix your symptoms, guess what happens? You start to feel better. Your symptoms start to decrease and you might even heal.
So
It's
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 kind of,
amazing. It's an amazing
yeah,
process.
so it's kind of a detachment. We're not ignoring, but we're kind of detaching, accepting, becoming aware. It's yeah, I'm okay with this. Like we've been living under threat for
Mhm.
close to 2 years, in a country with war, and I was noticed that I could have had physical symptoms because it's been scary, but I was with my fear, was with my loneliness, I was with my anger. And I talked to tons of people and we're talking about how do we live under threat and not have it be in our body. And this is another, take home tool
Yeah.
that you can still be in threat and still be in that loop, but actually not have physical symptoms if let's talk, it's about the feelings. It's about and so let's talk about feelings and getting into your body and how we can create that bridge to the unconscious mind because it sounds esoteric. How can we help some of these brilliant, smart people that aren't able to get that? Like they're on the bridge and like, which way do I go, doc? I'm like, I don't know. Everybody has their own way.
So it's incredible because the mind is so smart, right? But the body is actually quite, it's smarter. Okay. It really has so much wisdom and so much information that we really don't understand because we think from a conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex, right? But what happens is that when you go into the body and you start to connect to these emotions are really just expressions of experiences that we've had in the past, right? So trauma is really not the event itself, it's the symptoms that happen after the event that actually keep us in chronic stress. So when we are going into the body, we reach these places where these emotions live. And these emotions are, whether they're fear, anger, frustration, guilt, it could be grief. Any of these emotions are actually windows of opportunity to look and see what it is, first of all, the body is trying to tell us. What are the experiences that are stuck that were not processed in the past? And to be able to allow them to flow, to be able to actually be there with safety, with compassion, and no judgment or criticism, but just pure acceptance. Not to like, but what happens is that many people feel these emotions and they become overwhelmed and they just want to push them down. They suppress these emotions. And that just brings us back into the head. It brings us back into the brain. And while the brain has its extremely like beneficial, we can rewire, we can use top down methods, it can definitely come into our favor. The body is where we actually feel what's going on and what we can, and it allows us to release all the sort of blocks and all the traumas that were. So there's a saying that says, in order to release or in order to, let's say heal it, you need to feel it. You need to feel these emotions, right?
Give us an
So,
example. An example. Like I would say, well, then someone has to hang out. Like if somebody's feeling, you know, uh, fatigue, someone's feeling like a head like pressurized, like they're in a plane. do they have to be with that, like, they have to be with that sensation and be with it and hang out there and become friends with, like, talk more about that, because now we're talking about, like, logistically, what do they have to do, because these people, they want to know what they have to do, and it's not always about doing. Let's talk about being.
Right. So just by being with a sensation from a distance, not having to actually envelop yourself into the story of what you are feeling. So if it's pain, for instance, if it's fatigue, if some kind of like bodily symptom, it's not having to dive into the story of, I'm never going to get any better. This pain is killing me. My doctor said this. This is the diagnosis. I'm never going to be able to feel better or work again or be with my kids or enjoy life. This is the kind of narrative that actually perpetuates the pain because it's attached to the emotion of fear, right? And it reinforces the pain fear cycle. So having to just pay attention to the emotion, detaching the story from the emotion, and just taking a look and seeing the emotion for what is and just being present. So they say that an emotion only lasts about 90 seconds. Did you know that? It's
Oh,
only
I
about,
love that. I
yes.
love hearing a new
So
fact.
these are 90 seconds. It's actually something, it's
And
an
then what
incredible.
happens to it?
So it's usually a wave that goes out of the body, getting released. So what happens that emotions are just motions and energy, right? Emotions are motions and energy. We feel the emotion, it's a wave. And usually, if it's not attached to a story or narrative, the emotion will just pass. Usually, people get stuck into a depressive state or their emotions start taking over because the story is always attached to the emotion.
This is so important, and I want to break it down to maybe even third grade talk. And there's a
Yeah.
couple of questions that I think are going to pertain to this, to maybe say it again in a little different way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Katie says, if one is okay with their symptoms, how long does one leave it before they need to alter their strategy? It's a good question. How do we know if the trauma is fully released? And then Kelly is really saying, I can't get my head, I think you're saying, around how I can't get my head around anxiety because so much chronic pain. So we're talking about, like, there. I think we're trying to get there intellectually. So maybe we can ask these questions and we can answer them, but isn't the way there is going to have to be somewhat not through the head but through the body? So go ahead, and if you can address these questions, I can see what people are trying to ask, but if you can do that
Sure, sure.
together or separately because we have time, it's up
Okay.
to you. But thank
So
you.
okay, so first I'm gonna just address the head. I think this is Kelly's question. I am I was a person, I'm still a person that always lives in their head. Okay? I'm very much connected to my body right now, but my mind is overactive. So what happens is that when people who really lead with their mind, their thoughts are, constantly in anxiety mode, what happens is that top-down methods actually are beneficial as well as bottom up, which is why I work with both top down methods like pain reprocessing therapy, brain rewiring, also with bottom up. So what happens is that anxiety really is living in the body. It's in the nervous system. The thoughts are in our brain, right? But what happens is that when we actually regulate the nervous system in the body, right? And we start to bring safety back into the body, something that our body and minds haven't felt for quite a while, the anxiety begins to reduce, the thoughts begin to reduce. We're able to focus a little bit more on the body and less in the head. And that's all how, what happens when we start to really connect more with the way that we feel rather than the way that we think. So, nervous system regulation is such an important key to healing that kind of anxiety or trauma because anxiety really is just a nervous system state, right? Our brains are trying to perceive what it would be like in the future so we're not surprised, so we're not scared, so it reduces the fear. But what it actually does is it robs us of our present. So, I hope that addressed Kelly's question.
Well, I just want to further talk more about, because it's still so esoteric. So I come out of my head, I'm in my body. It's going to help my brain put me into parasympathetic nervous system, and I'm in my body with the feelings. But because it's a strange, uncomfortable place, and because I'm disassociated, because I'm nervous, because I'm anxious, because I don't is I would think the the action at that moment is to just stay there, stay with it, like sit with it. Like I posted something earlier tonight, just sit with it. And a lot of us don't always sit. We are in this doing mode, and we have to learn more about being, which is not comfortable, but very safe. Right, Jeannie?
I completely agree with you. And I think that that's what we all need to do, is that we need to pause whenever we are feeling something. Just pause and feel within. But I will say that for a person who is experiencing anxiety and dysregulation, having to pause, having to just attune to the emotions is very, very difficult. So that is why I mentioned bringing in a little bit of the top down method, using your brain to actually bring in the safety. And that means having to maybe orient towards your surroundings and bring in resources, using your brain to actually say, I'm looking around me, I'm present in the moment, I'm safe. Doing maybe vagal toning exercises, which is a wonderful way to regulate your nervous system. But also, when we're getting to a point where we're feeling a bit safer, then you can pause. Then you can stop whatever you're feeling in that anxious state and then come into the body, because it's not easy for a person who's extremely anxious to just stop and start to feel. That's just really crazy.
I
It's like
think
my heart's pounding and I'm feeling really nervous. I'm
so.
sweating and I'm like, I'm not going to go and feel my emotions at that moment.
I wonder if some of us think that, going out for a run or doing some yoga or deep breathing and meditation, which we're going to talk about in a
Mhm.
minute, is that's considered bottom up, isn't it? They're bottom up actions and
Absolutely.
behaviors.
Absolutely. Yoga, meditation, any kind of even I'm not going to say EFT tapping because I think that it's both bottom up and top down. But there's a lot of different bottom up methods that are very, very good for people with anxiety. I would not always recommend meditation for someone that is experiencing anxiety.
I want to talk about that in a minute because
Yes.
that's a very important topic and we talked about it before the show. But I do want to address Katie's question,
Hmm.
um, which is how do we know if the trauma is fully released?
So this is it's a difficult question to answer, but it's usually trauma. You'll notice that there are signs that the body will show you that the trauma is released from the actual place. Like, for instance, if we have like a lot of grief and we have a lot of trauma, sometimes we feel it in the heart space. So sometimes when we go into the body and we notice that grief or that sadness from it, we allow the emotions to release, we'll notice a relief. We'll notice certain signs in the body, like a warmth, a tingling sensation, which is really just a sign that the nervous system is recalibrating and releasing that kind of trauma. But in general, the best way to know whether a trauma is released is that we're not triggered by that certain kind of event or that certain kind of particular. So if there's a certain kind of, if you're aware of a trauma from a past event and you encounter a certain situation during your day, and if you don't feel reactive to the situation, it usually means that the trauma has been released or it has been softened. So it's not that trauma really doesn't release, it doesn't disappear from the body, it just changes shape. It softens like in edges. So it still lives in the body, but it changes in a way that it does not make you reactive and create symptoms. So the symptoms are not there, but the event and the actual past memory might still be there. It isn't creating some kind of, adaptive, maladaptive response in the body.
I wonder if, depending on big T, little t,
Yeah.
if one book I read where we talked about we integrate our past into our present. We kind of
Mhm.
integrate it, and it becomes who we are. And we use it to serve us. Or what if we bring now our trauma is still there, the thoughts are still there, but there's this compassion and
Mhm.
love and awareness
Yeah,
rather than a reaction. Is that part of the
absolutely, absolutely. It just becomes a part of us that we end up actually admiring because it helped us transform. And that's post traumatic growth. We become a completely, it becomes like part of our compassionate self. The part of us that really is so, in tuned with what it is that we needed, what needs get to be met. And it really transforms us in ways that you can't describe until you actually have gone through it. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
important, and not everybody is ready to hear.
Hmm.
Some of the people that I've met that have healed, big tumors and, seeing
Yeah.
death and coming back from it. And all of them have, and, Anita Morgiane has the story about dying to live or living to die, or
Yes.
what the book is called. And, not everybody's ready to hear about that their trauma was a gift, and I'm not underestimating anyone's trauma or how they needed this wake up call. I mean, Joe Dispenza was hit by a truck. It wasn't like a wake up call. It was like, but how he handled it and responded. I don't like the word handle. How he responded to it and met it. How he met the trauma was how he came out of it so
Yeah.
brilliantly. And I think it's how we meet. And I remember
Yeah.
talking to some cancer survivors, and they stopped talking about beating cancer because it was about meeting cancer. So,
Hmm.
so if we can meet our chronic pain, maybe Kelly, if we can meet our autoimmune symptom, if we can meet ourselves, because it does boil down to self. And so let's now speak about meditation, because this is an important it's coming up for so many of us now, because what is brain regulation and vagus nerve? It's really, we're going deep, we're listening to the body, we're watching our thoughts like a ticker tape. So it's kind of a meditative, like, it's not meditation, but it's, let's talk a little bit about meditation and how for some of us it may not be the best thing, and vagal toning
Right.
is better, but it's getting to the same goal.
Right. So for people who have been quite born, I'm going to say disconnected or in a dissociative state. Some people will be in a certain kind of nervous system state where they have been so disconnected from their bodies and emotions for so many years that going into the body using meditation, going and listening in can be so terrifying. And there's such a world inside of us that contains so many different kind of memories and emotions that if you haven't really been in touch with your emotions or what is going on inside your body for so many years, meditation might not be for you. It's just so incredibly scary for that person. And it was for me. Every time if I had chronic anxiety, if I meditated, I'd feel my heartbeat. I'd start to have shallow breathing and I would go into a panic state. So, meditation is a wonderful way to really regulate the nervous system to go in. However, it isn't for everyone, and it doesn't mean that it won't be later. But what's important is that when you regulate your nervous system and bring safety back in, you're able to contact those places inside of you and say, I'm back. I'm listening to you now, and I can actually sit through a meditation session. And so that's what happens when you start to, use also brain rewiring and nervous system regulation to bring yourself a little bit closer and to tune in to what the body is trying to tell you. I hope I answered your question, but I think you wanted to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about.
yeah, that, and also, and if, like, we talk about a medicine cabinet, a toolbox, our
Yeah.
medicine cabinets look very different than, our parents' medicine cabinet. And so I love that we can send home some tools in our joint living room with our listeners
Hmm.
about vagal toning, because it's a little bit of like, okay, I'll hum a little bit, or, but tell us more about the vagal toning, because you're saying if somebody is getting triggered by meditation, there's other ways to draw them in, as you said, or to connect. Can we talk about that? Because you seem to be really knowledgeable about it.
Sure. For sure. So vagal toning is a way to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is it's a cranial nerve. It's the longest nerve we have in our body that goes through the face, down the neck, all the way down to our gut.
Can you
And
tell everybody what's the name of it in Latin?
in Latin, actually, I don't know. It's
It's
probably, isn't it?
called the Wanderer.
Oh, the wandering nerve. Yes,
Wanderer.
yes, yes. And it's like a super highway that sends information from our brain down to our gut. Now, when that vagus nerve gets impaired or it becomes dysregulated because of all sorts of different kind of events, chronic stress, biological trauma, physical trauma, any kind of emotional trauma, it will impair this nerve and our nervous system becomes dysregulated. So what these vagal toning tools do is that it stimulates the vagus nerve. It provides you with safety when it does that. So the vagus nerve is so crucial for healing trauma, and it has an incredible power over our bodies. It actually operates the way our organs work, the way that our digestive system works, our hearts. Okay, so there's like a respiratory factor here, the way that our brains think, the way that we see the world. So we can actually go out into the world and see everything through a lens of danger, or we can see through a lens of safety. So when we tone the vagus nerve, we're able to actually look at the world through the lens of safety, start to stimulate this vagus nerve, notice how the nervous systems not just calms down, but begins to just create this resilience within the body, emotional and physical resilience. So I think a myth with these vagal toning tools is that it's going to help cure your anxiety and just make you calm for the rest of your life. So what the idea here is that, first of all, we're humans. There's stress all around us. Just like you said, we live in a country, there might be war. Another country might have natural disasters, and we have stress all around our lives. But what this does is that it just increases the resilience. So when you encounter that kind of stress, you bounce back into balance and not further plummets towards another kind of chronic stress point, which can also cause more physiological symptoms, emotional symptoms, depression. So it creates that resilience within the body. So vagal toning tools can be a set of exercises, such as eye yoga exercises. They can be breath work is the fastest way to regulate your nervous system. It's a wonderful tool. They can be movement exercises, tapping. And these vagal toning tools, when I use them, they were the first thing that really started to heal my symptoms. And when I started to use these tools, I started to look at the world with different eyes. And when I walked outside and I started to see colors were becoming brighter, I wasn't reacting emotionally to triggers that I usually emotionally react from. And the world just started to become a little bit easier to live in. And that's where also brain rewiring also regulates your nervous system, because you actually use top-down tools to bring
So,
safety through
yeah, well, look,
different
at
pathways.
some point the top down and the up, they're together, but the question
Yeah,
is how you use them, what your intention is. Again, with the vagal exercises, we want to not think we need to be fixed. We want to be able to have ways to calm the nervous system, which indirectly will become the new pathway, the new neural circuit, the new go-to. Doesn't mean we
exactly.
won't be triggered. It just will have an ability, we'll have a resilience.
Exactly. And I think that this answers, I'd like to answer Katie's question as well, is that it's okay to be okay with your symptoms, to do these vagal toning tools with a desire to feel better. So it's okay to hope to be better, to feel that hope to be better. But when you're actually running and you're stressed out to do these tools, then you're sending that message to your nervous system and to your brain that you're basically not okay, that you're in danger, and this just reinforces the feedback loop. So there's a fine line, and it's understanding that there's a certain kind of balance between understanding what it is that I need to do and doing it with love and compassion, knowing that I am okay regardless of this sickness or this illness or this anxiety, but choosing to use these tools to live a better life. And it's just having to reduce that fear factor, reduce that panic factor, in that maybe even talking to yourself or talking to your brain and saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm going to start. I understand that I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, but I'm still okay. And I'm going to use these tools because I deserve to feel safe, because, I deserve to feel better. Yeah.
I didn't know that about Scott, even though we interviewed together. I must have forgot, but he says totally. I used to re-traumatize my brain when meditating before I understood that the pain was not dangerous. We can have a corrective experience if we are able to lean into the sensations through a lens of safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in other words, because what is meditating? Connecting, and this is though so many of us need to go to our unconscious mind and be comfortable in that place that may be dark and scary, like under the bed with a toy lion, I call it. And so we have to get comfortable. We don't have to, but in order to get more and more comfortable, we have to practice, wires together,
Mhm.
neurons that fire together, wire together. So we have to, we, it would serve us to practice various tools. Because I imagine, I break it down for people like have meditative moments. Every thought is a meditative moment. Every breath is a meditative moment.
Right.
And for some of us that can sit for 20 minutes, okay, if that's your fancy, go sit for 20 minutes. But even Dr. Hanscom and Scrivener, they say, 10 minutes a day. So and everyone has to have their own journey, their own path, and it's changing all the time. I'm sorry, it's not just wrapped up in a package and this is it, and it's free in the mail overnight. I wish. And for you who are all on your journey, you're just smart and sensitive and brilliant people, and you're gifted. So, so thank you for that, Scotty. I love always the way that you talk about leaning into the sensations, the pleasant sensations, and leaning into them because it really is a coming out of your comfort zone and making this new um, discomfort zone your new comfort zone. And yes, sometimes then that will become uh, like again, it's people just want the journey to stop and they want it to end. And I hear you. I hear you. You have a right to want that. And anything's possible, everything's probable. So tell us
Yes.
more about and any more questions out there. I love interacting with you guys. It really is why I continue to go live like this each week because I love you guys coming into the studio. So, but tell us more about so you're living with all these symptoms, fibromyalgia, osteoporosis at age 37, osteoarthritis, you said.
Osteoarthritis. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something else that they told you. It doesn't matter. But so what
Chronic
happens?
fatigue and
Chronic
yeah.
fatigue. Yeah. I mean, whoa, chronic fatigue is just, I'm blown away by the amount of people that, especially after
Yes.
COVID and after various traumas, like that's where the body sits. And
Yes.
then I'm meeting people that are recovering from chronic fatigue. And I'm like, there's so much hope. So tell us exactly sort of again on the timeline. You start to do these tools, you activate your vagus nerve, you incorporate and apply these bottom up, top down strategies. Did you're also a yoga teacher, so I think you started to do
Yes.
yoga. And so tell us more about what
Somatic
you did for
movement.
your healing.
So what I did for my healing from these conditions was that I combined nervous system regulation using vagal toning tools with brain rewiring program. So brain rewiring involves a top-down method where we actually, first of all, we acknowledge the state that we're in. We notice that there's a let's say, a pattern or a thought that's not contributing to our symptom, to our states, to our to our well-being, and we're stopping it, just full stop, and just shifting the focus into something like a resource, into safety, which is why we use grounding tools, vagal toning tools. And so whatever it is that, for instance, if you're feeling pain in the body, if you're feeling like a symptom and you're noticing a thought like, here it is again, I'm not going to be able to function today because of this pain. So it's having to stop that thought, shifting towards a grounding, like within the body, somatically going into the body and saying, I get it, but I'm safe. I'm here right now and I'm safe. And having to show your body that it's all right, and to just stop that thought and to be able to go into visualizing and changing memory structures by visualizing something different, reframing and changing that thought into something a little bit different. So it's not actually pushing down emotions, because there are a lot of brain rewiring programs that actually say put your emotions on hold for about 6 months, because you're actually rewiring your brain and we don't want these negative emotions around you. But what I do is that I acknowledge it, because these are parts of us that do not want to be suppressed. And they're going to come screaming back. And I have a lot to say about this, but I'm not going to go there. What we do is that in brain rewiring, in my program, is that I acknowledge what it is, what emotion there is, and I allow it to be there just momentarily, allow it to come together in like a sort of dual awareness, together with some safety, some resource, some grounding, allow it to just understand that it's okay to be there. And then to
Angry,
be
I'm
able,
pissed. I'm angry, I'm
yeah,
pissed, I'm fearful, I'm
and
rageful, and I'm going to
but
start
it's
to.
okay. Yeah, exactly. I'm saying I recognize that I'm in fear right now. I recognize that I'm really angry, and I feel it in my heart. Let's say I feel my heart racing, noticing where it is in the body, grounding through it, and saying, however, I choose right now in this moment to know that I am safe regardless of this anger. This anger might be there, but I choose to shift for the moment and to come into visualizing a different kind of like thought or pattern. So it's not really pushing down the emotions, because it still lives there, the anger, but you're actually just reframing by bringing in some kind of visualization or resource or something. And that actually what it does is that it calms the nervous system down and allows you to change the way your body and your brain perceives the symptoms, because it starts to actually develop some safety rather than danger.
About your healing and how your symptoms slowly shifted and decreased.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't get that.
It's
I think
okay.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you hear me? Did you hear me?
Yes,
Can
I
you hear
can
me
hear
now?
you.
So tell us how your symptoms slowly decreased and you were able to regulate, and you basically, you didn't have to get knee surgery, and your bones are fine, your joints are fine, and you're sleeping well. Like, tell us more about how you were able to, because you actually accepted your emotions and you sat with them and you understood your trauma, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And tell us more about your healing journey.
So healing my body and the pain in my body. I When I started to use the vagal toning tools, I already started to see a reduction in symptoms. I started to see that I was able to actually be with my symptoms with a lot more acceptance, a lot more peace. The fear started to dissolve, right? So I noticed that there was fear there, and I was okay to be with the fear because I was regulating my nervous systems. The pain started to feel a little bit less like powerful, less intense. And I noticed it as time went by, the more that I was emotionally reactive, like the less I was emotionally reactive, the less I felt these symptoms. So they really came hand in hand. And I noticed after a couple of months after brain rewiring and regulating my nervous system that I started to feel a lot more energy come back into the body. I noticed that my muscles became stronger. I had less symptoms in my body. My knee, the strange thing is that the knee is actually structural. So I know that you come from pain reprocessing therapy. So the knee is very much structural and not a, TMS symptom. However, it really ties into fear. So when I actually reduced that fear pain cycle, I started to feel a lot of relief in my knee. And of course, now I'm a yoga instructor. So I teach yoga and I facilitate somatic movement. So I use my knee, I use my body all the time. I am just able to go out and just live my life and just, allow my body to move without that kind of fear of what's going to happen. What is exactly, what the pain is going to do for me. So if I feel pain, if I do feel pain in my knee, I'm okay with it. I'm saying it's all right to be there. It's okay. And once that happens, once you're actually living outside of that comfort zone with safety, you don't feel that kind of pain anymore. And and your body starts to heal. It's incredible.
But you're pointing on, and I'm glad you mentioned about the structural, because we know people with spinal stenosis, people with various joint arthritis still can respond to these methods because their relationship changes with their body and their symptoms. And so somebody might have more or less pain because of their relationship, and we know about this. So
Mhm.
the structural thing is like on hold. When I hear that, I was like,
Yes.
okay. And, Schuberner mentions it. Gordon will say it in his notes, like, wait a minute. And even if you're not in this list of neuroplastic, you still can respond. And when we watched the movie Love Heals, I mean, she had 2 failed spinal surgeries and leaking spinal fluid, Dana in the movie, and she's still living with 99% less pain because of her relationship with her body and loving herself. So the pain changes. It's like the matrix. So
Yes.
let's just put that out there. This is not woo woo. This
No,
is
it's not. And it's actually, I think that any kind of issue within the body, whether it's structural, if it's TMS, whatever it is, what it actually is on a deeper level is a lack of coherence, right? It's a lack of coherence. When you are, this is very Joe Dispenza's language, so I'm sorry for those that are
love it.
not familiar with Joe Dispenza, but when we're actually not in touch with our true self-expression, ourselves, when we have trauma stuck in the body, that can create some kind of, you know, space, like a matter, like a lack of coherence, and that is actually the issue. And when you open that, when you release that kind of trauma, when you actually start to live your life and create that coherence, is when you start to see relief. So I don't think it really matters. I think that the body is incredibly capable of healing itself more
Over
than
and
we
over and over
actually
again.
know. And there have been so many incredible cases of people healing all sorts of conditions, from like terminal cancer to just simple, anything. So it's unbelievable, and it's happening more and more every day.
Again, we're not against doctors. We want you to integrate with your medical doctor. We want you to go in and say to your
Yeah.
doctor, let's have a discussion. I'd like you to treat me, not my
Mhm.
symptoms. My symptoms are different than the next person. What should I do specifically for in my life? How can I, independently? So part of it is the relationship with your doctor, because doctors are so much more open, understanding. You have to really attract the right doctor. And even I want to just say to the listeners, I didn't mention this very much, but in the Physio-Psychological Disorders Association, which they changed their name to the Association of of Neuroplastic Treatment. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful organization with Dr. Clark and all the docs. They have a
Mm.
special note, a special letter in their resources that you can bring to your doctor saying, um, I would like you to help me. I would like to lean into the mind body neuroplastic methods, as well as getting my chemo, God forbid if you need chemo, or as well as getting my epidural shot. I'd like to, and they have a letter that you can take because especially that we work with doctors and we get taught by medical doctors that, have moved over to the understanding the mind body connection.
Mhm.
They want to educate the doctors. And we're seeing so many more doctors come into our arena and bring such joy and such knowledge and such understanding of both worlds, because that's what it's about, mind body. It's not just mind, it's
Yes.
not just body.
It's so amazing. And I think in the US as well, there are quite a lot of doctors, functional medicine doctors, but also other kind of doctors that are now recommending brain rewiring for these chronic conditions. So they see results in their patients. They've heard about neuroplasticity, and they're starting to recommend it to their patients. I'd love to see this a lot more common in Israel, so I'm waiting for that to happen. But in the meantime, I'm so happy to hear that this is starting to become a trend. It's really exciting.
Well, we're resonating to not only the listeners in the studio, but all over the quantum world and all over the energy fields, as in what's the movie about the one field,
The
where
one field.
we're talking together
Yeah.
about healing, and it's being vibrated all over the world who needs it. So it's like whoever needs healing
Yeah.
come into our space, because it's energy,
It's
it's
acting.
enthusiasm, it's chemical, like it's chemical
Mm,
to believe. And to anyone out there that's having a bad day, you know we all have those days. And
yeah.
it's really about hope and belief, and knowing that you're not a victim of your body, that your body's protecting you, not punishing you. And so I'd like you to take a few more minutes and leave the listeners with one or two. You said so many wonderful things, you're so knowledgeable, you really have um your finger on the pulse of
Mm,
this
thank
work.
you.
And I really love, I love talking about it. Of course, I just want to go study and I want to just learn everything. I want to be so good at everything, and I know you can only be good at a few things. So, but you're excellent at this, and you really have a vocabulary and a language. So, talk a little bit more about, leave our listeners with a couple of vagal toning ideas, and mention about the meditation doesn't always work, but you can talk a little bit more about that, so people can go home and feel
Sure, of
empowered
course.
and feel motivated.
So, in general, for anyone experiencing any kind of anxiety or chronic pain, I really do recommend looking up. You can find free information on YouTube about vagal toning tools. Um, you can even check out my Instagram page. I have some free tips on if you know exercises that you can try on your own. Just any way to regulate your nervous system. Humming is a wonderful way. Just humming and listening to the vibration in the body is a wonderful to regulate your nervous system. You can do this in the car. You can do this with your children. Vagal toning tools are meant to be very short, concise, and incredibly useful. So that's why they're so successful. So just trying, you can find those on YouTube. Just simply placing your hands on your heart, or maybe even your hand, just like a compassion hold. That's a vagal toning exercise that if
I
you
love that.
actually connect to the body, it's an incredible way of just connecting more and regulating your nervous system because your nervous system feels that safety. But I do also want to say that the both of the combination between creating a brain state and using neuroplasticity together with vagal toning is such a wonderful way to actually heal not just chronic conditions but trauma. So I have this program called Embodied, which really combines both methods, both top down, both bottom up, because I come from both backgrounds and I've really compiled everything that I've learned in the past 10 years of doing so much work with not only myself, deep inner work, somatic inquiry, any kind of I don't know if you know Katie Byron. It's like a lot of Katie like inquiry work. Everything's piled up into this program. And it seems overwhelming, but it's actually a program that really takes you through the steps in a very, very regulating way. And I do it with so much safety that it's completely very, very easy to follow, easy to understand, and so incredibly safe and so incredibly soothing. And it's just so really, I recommend trying vagal toning tools before you try anything, before you start brain rewiring, before you start to heal your conditions. It's usually the way to just bring safety back in so the brain and the nervous system feel safe enough to take on that extra kind of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's any kind of trauma work, you know? And I also use the opportunity in the program to dive a little bit deeper into the belief structures and any kind of parts that are within us that want to stay sick. So that's a completely different topic on its own, but that's something else that the program provides. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. So Noah, your information will be on the description. This video will be this live recording will be uploaded
Mm.
by my producer. Her name is Tovah, and I'll get to that tonight or tomorrow. And no, because if anyone has met you on the broadcast, you'll speak with them in a discovery call and say, you met on Tovah's roundtable. And because I think this information is important, and like what we tell people, like you can do this. You live with yourself. We can
Yeah.
only be the messenger. So you can share some things and then say, go fish, go do this, and practice it. And guess what? We have to practice it every day. And guess what? We have to
Mhm.
repeat it. And we have
Yes.
to repeat it. And that could be very frustrating and very laborious. But guess what? We are really building. We're builders. We're creators. We're building new pathways. And the fact that you got up and even did a vagal nerve exercise, whether you see results or not, is actually a huge brick on your
Mhm.
house, a huge,
Yes.
mile on the road you're building. So I'm encouraging all of you to stay with this process, to trust this process,
Mhm.
um, and reach out if you need anything from us. We're here. I thank you. It was so nice to have the studio full of some familiar faces and some new faces. And Katie, again, Katie, I meant to say Noah. But Katie just said, I think maybe, yeah, yeah. She's responded about the structural things. Um, so I do want to say that if somebody sees this and mentions you, that you offer them a conversation so they can reach out to you. You're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Your name is Noa Kairy. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm available on almost all social media platforms except for TikTok and Twitter. But I am very much, you can contact me by email, by telephone. I'd like to just leave it off with one thing, and just to say that whatever it is that anyone is feeling, whether it's anxiety or chronic pain, chronic illness, the body's in protection mode, and it's only trying to do whatever it's trying to do is to protect you. So whatever it is that we can do to activate that kind of compassion is going to actually reduce any kind of fear. So just having to understand that it's in protection mode. So just leaving that off, because I think a lot of people really, really feel so much different kind of feelings towards their pain and all that. So that's really something I'd like to leave off with.
Beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
message. I so I always like to say we'll meet again because there's
Yeah.
so much to talk about, and we have to repeat it and talk about it again because I need to remember and so do all of us need to remember.
Mhm.
So we'll make a date to come back and talk about it because it's fascinating stuff. And I am so grateful to meet you, and I'm so grateful
Thank
to
you so much for having me, Dr. Tovah.
yeah. So we'll
You.
be in touch, and good night to everybody. God bless you, and we'll see you next week. All the best.
Bye. Good night, everyone.